again, everyone. Welcome to the Calimesa Insider Podcast. I am Will Coble, City Manager for the City of Calimesa. So glad to have you on board this week. And obviously, I want to give a huge shout out to our neighbors in Yucaipa who launched their podcast this week. Their first guest was Trevor Benson, and he actually, fun fact, is the husband of our Deputy City Clerk, Yeza Benson. So we do have some relation there. So congratulations to the City of Yucaipa. I wish you lots of success on your podcast. But always remember, we were first. So I'm just giving them a hard time. I'm not, it's all in good fun. As a matter of fact, I hope that maybe Chris Mann and I can collaborate on a podcast. We can do either a simulcast where we post the same podcast on both our platforms, or I'm a guest on his and then he's a guest on ours. I would like to get our partner city managers on the podcast at some point to talk about how we work together as a region. So I think that would be a pretty cool episode. So one of the big things that happened this week, probably the biggest thing that happened this week, obviously, is the line fire. So that actually did spark late last week. So it was right before I started recording last week's episode, but it really blew up into a big incident. Our Calimesa Fire Department did have resources on that fire. We had engine 201, which is our reserve type 1 engine, as well as our water tender was sent to the line fire. And also we had our brush engine, our type 3 brush engine at the airport fire as well. We responded to that one partially because that one, it was a lot of the fire was in Riverside County. It started in Orange County, went over the hill into Riverside County, and that's where we were helping out. So we were trying to help out our neighbors. So obviously, as a small fire department, you can imagine that does put a strain on our resources, but rest assured, our city was covered. We still had everyone here that we needed to have. We had a full contingent of firefighters and paramedics here to service our area in case of, obviously, we need anything local. But at one point, every single one of our firefighters were on duty in one way or another. They were either at the line fire, the airport fire, or at our local firehouse. So I want to give a big shout out and thanks to our fire department for their contribution to the effort and for their dedication day in and day out, 24/7, 365 for our city. I think incidents like these really highlight the need and why we have 24/7 coverage for fire service, especially in a place like this. I know there's talks about, a lot of other states and a lot of other places do volunteer fire departments. A lot of times those are in towns with a couple hundred people, maybe a couple of thousand people. This area is just simply too big for that, to not have professional firefighters, especially given the fact that we need to help them out so that they will help us in our time of need. And you can see the number of resources. If you've driven by Noble Creek Park in the last week, you've seen exactly just how many resources have to come to a fire like this. And it's not, and just think about it, it's not nearly as big as the fire up in Paradise or the fires back in the mid-2000s in San Diego, which burned hundreds of thousands of acres. In the grand scheme of things, the line fire was a large fire, and the airport fire was a large fire, and we also had the bridge fire in LA and San Bernardino County as well. So just 3 big fires all at the same time really did put a big strain on our resources. But it looks like the firefighters are finally starting to get the upper hand on each of those incidents because of the weather has gotten better. So that's helped a lot. But, big thanks to all of our firefighters, not just City of Calimesa, although, obviously I'm very partial to them. Everybody in the fire service really had to step up this last week for our region. And I think that there's been a lot of acres burned, but at the end of the day, they've done a good job to try to minimize the amount of structural damages and, more importantly, saving lives and making sure that people were not killed in these incidents. So again, big shout out and big thanks to them. So as we head into campaign season, I obviously want to go over a few things. We are fully there. We know our slate of candidates. The 3 incumbents are running: Mayor Davis, Mayor Pro Tem Hewitt, Councilmember Molina, and then also we have Eric Cundiff and Edgar Garcia running for seats as well. So 3 seats are up. So when you go to vote on November 5th, or whether you're mailing your ballot before that, you will be voting for up to three council members for the city of Calimesa. So just keep that in mind. You don't just vote for one. I mean, you can vote for one, but you can vote for up to 3 since we do at-large elections. But obviously, one of the things we see a lot of are campaign signs. So I do just want to go over that real quick so people are aware of what the rules are. All of our candidates are given these rules, and it looks like they're adhering to them. We've had a few people running for more regional offices, federal offices, things like that maybe don't know our rules, because our rules are a little bit different than the county. So, it could just be they didn't know. Maybe their campaigns didn't know. But we have seen a couple of violations of this. So I did want to give real quick, just everyone, so everyone's kind of on the same page about what the rules are regarding political signs. Because again, you want to make sure that you don't limit political free speech, First Amendment rights, right? And that's why these regulations are written in a way that doesn't violate First Amendment rights. But it strikes the balance between not having overzealous signs and having signs everywhere and almost creating blight, but at the same time still allowing for political free speech and making sure that everyone has equal access to provide their free speech rights. So the first thing that you have to understand is political signs are permitted in any zone district, but they're subject to the following provisions. The first one is an application shall be submitted to the planning department. And this is important. And the reason it's important is because we need to be able to know who we need to contact if there's a violation of our ordinance. So if we don't know who is putting these signs out, or at least you probably know based on who's on the sign, right? If it's a candidate, but we need to be able to know who to contact if there's a problem, right? If we either have to have a sign removed because it's in the wrong place, or it's out before the limitations, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, we need to be able to call who is in charge so that they can come either pick up their signs, move their signs, because after a few days, we will remove them. And then we obviously need to know who needs to come and get them, or where they need to be taken to. So that's why that application is needed. It's a no-cost application. We don't charge for it. It's just so that we have that record so we know what to do if there's a violation of these other rules. So the first one is no political sign shall be placed earlier than 45 days prior to the election, which addresses and shall be removed no later than 3 days following the date of the election. Okay, so in this case, it's Saturday, September 21st is the first day that political signs are allowed. And obviously, just driving around town, I have seen signs, and obviously those aren't supposed to be out yet because they're not allowed to be out for another 8 days. So that's a violation of our code. A political sign located in a commercial or industrial zone shall not exceed 32 square feet in total area for one side, and it can't block the visibility of traffic. For residential signs, they shall not exceed 8 square feet in total area. So those are usually the smaller lawn signs that you see. Those are usually ones that are seen in residential zones. No political sign shall exceed over an overall height of 8 feet. So signs used for signs identifying political headquarters also need to comply with the provisions of the sign code. So this is just political signs that are either standalone type of things. But when we're talking about political headquarters, that it's identifying a political headquarters, they just have to comply with the city's overall sign code. It doesn't necessarily apply in this situation. This is a big one too, and a lot of people don't realize. No political signs shall be posted on any public property or in the public right-of-way. This one's important because, for example, I've seen several signs on the median on Myrtlewood Drive, just east of Calimesa Boulevard. So between Calimesa Boulevard and 5th, there is that median there. That is public right-of-way. Signs are not allowed. Political signs are not allowed on the median. So they're not allowed in parks. They're not allowed on sidewalks. Obviously, if it's on somebody's lawn next to a sidewalk, they're fine because that's not public right of way. That is someone's private property. But if it's on the streets, Caltrans is big about this too. So as you get off the freeway, all of that land on an off ramp and on ramp belongs to Caltrans. They have the similar regulations that you can't have political signs, and they will just come pick them up. Caltrans will just come pick them up. They won't even give notification, because in our case, if the planning director finds that any political sign has been posted or is being maintained on public property or in the public right of way, in violation of the provisions of the section, the owner of the sign shall be given written notice to remove said sign, and that's why we need to have that application on file. Said notice shall include a brief statement of the reasons for requiring removal. If the person so notified fails to correct the violation or remove the sign within 5 days after such notice, the planning director may cause said sign to be removed. If the owner of the sign cannot in good faith be located within a reasonable time, the sign shall be deemed abandoned. Any political sign that remains posted for more than 14 days after the election to which it pertains shall also be deemed abandoned. The planning director may cause such abandoned signs and any signs which constitute an immediate peril to persons or property to be removed summarily and without proper prior notice. So if we can't get in touch with the campaign, and again, that's why it's important for us to have that application on file, it's going to be a little more difficult for us to find. We're still going to make the effort to locate who would be in charge of these signs to get them removed, even if we don't have the application on file. But if we can't, for whatever reason find them, we can remove them and we consider them abandoned. So there are several signs that we're aware of. We have received some complaints, and we are addressing that through code enforcement. So our code enforcement officer has been trying to contact the parties that are involved, and I'm not going to say who they are. If people have been driving around the town, they know who they are. And we're following up accordingly. So rest assured, that's what we are. So again, remember, signs cannot be posted until Saturday, September 21st. Because that will be 45 days before the election. All right. So real quickly, I want to go over some of the things that are coming up on our city council meeting this Monday. A couple of things on our consent calendar, updates to the city's conflict of interest codes. That's required by law every 2 years by state law. So we're just doing the regular updates. What it usually incorporates new state laws that are required under conflict of interest, so that our laws or our codes are in sync with that. We are going to have the second reading of the ordinance approving the housing element and the ordinance approving the city council compensation increase. Those are second readings. We're going to have an agreement for IT services. So we've been using a company for the last few years. We went out to RFP, and so we're awarding a contract to the successful bidder on that project. And then they will start their services on October 1st. We're going to have a public hearing, and I think this one's a really interesting one. And this one's I'm really happy we're bringing this forward. We're having a public hearing on project noticing requirements for public hearings. So when it comes to usually these are related to land development applications. So we're going to be adding two really important things. We're going to increase the noticing radius. So right now, any property within 300 feet of a subject property. So the subject property of an entitlement application, we send a notice of public hearing to a radius of 300 feet. We're increasing that to 600 feet. And the reason that this was brought up was because one of the planning commissioners stated, it doesn't make sense that a council member could be conflicted because of a conflict of interest, financial or otherwise, if they're within 500 feet of a project, yet we're only sending notices to 300 feet. So, theoretically, a council member could live 400 feet from a project and therefore be conflicted out, and yet their neighbor won't even get a notice related to it. So that didn't make a lot of sense to him. And when he brought that up, I said, my thought process is, yeah, actually, you're right. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So we're increasing that radius to 600 feet. We were considering whether we wanted to go out to 1,000 feet, but the Planning Commission had a very nice debate on that, and they settled on recommending 600 feet to the City Council. And then the second thing that is being required, that is a new thing, is that we are requiring the applicant to place a notice of public hearing on the subject property for the public hearing. So I've seen this in a lot of other cities. And I was a little surprised actually when I got here that we didn't do that. So we're actually going to bring that forward. And so now that will be a requirement for public hearings going forward. So anytime there's a property that's going to be subject to a public hearing, there will be a big sign located in a conspicuous area on that property that lets the public know there's going to be there is going to be a public hearing. Here's why. Here's the date. It's going to have all the relevant information for the public. So this is, again, just transparency, making sure people are aware, so that, even if it's not necessarily a project that's within 600 feet would get a mailed notice for, they still drive by it, so they'll be aware of it. So just gives more public awareness to these public hearings. So I think these are good for transparency, and so to me these are no-brainers. So that's why we're recommending these to the city council. We are also giving it up. We're actually having the council consider an amendment to our senior services agreement with Family Services Association, or FSA. So back in episode 20, I talked about our grab and go meal program, and I talked about Assembly Bill 2410 that was carried by Assembly Member Greg Wallace on our behalf. And because that bill failed, there's still questions about the validity of our program. It's not specifically stated that we can have this program. There are some provisions that still allow it to a certain extent. So we're kind of operating under those parameters right now. But the bigger issue now that we're facing is funding. The state has cut their funding by about 25% for meal programs, and this is everybody, not just Calimesa. This is statewide. So because of that, because of the limits on the budget, by definition, the number of meals that can be served will go down. And so FSA's plan was to go back to congregate meals. And as we've talked about before, this has been a very successful program for the city, and so we want to make sure it continues. So what we're doing is this amendment will basically allow us to continue the grab and go meal at the current levels, which we have about 250 people signed up, but usually our average weekly actual participation is about 160. So 160 meals, 5 meals per person. So that's 800 meals per week that we're serving. FSA is budgeting roughly 30 meals a day, 5 days a week. So they're basing their budget on that. So what we're saying is, look, we want to just fund the difference, at least for the next few months, to try to figure out whether we can either figure out ways to cut costs related to the program, or if we can identify additional funding sources. So this is about a $40,000 expense. We have reserves that can cover that cost. But again, it'll buy us some time. So they were ready to pull the trigger and end the grab and go meal at the end of the month and putting them back in congregate meals. They're thinking 30 a day. They're budgeting for 30 a day. Our belief is more it's going to be maybe as low as 5, maybe as many as 15 in a day, probably averaging somewhere between 5 and 10 a day. But because they're budgeting for 30, we only have to fund the difference between 30 and basically 160. So that's where we're at with that program. And so we're recommending that the council approve the amendment to the agreement that will allow us to continue the program through December while we discuss with FSA how to move forward. So that's the other item. We also have 2 presentations that will be given at the beginning of the meeting. One will be from the San Bernardino Community College District, and who operates Crafton Hills College, by the way. And the other will be for Jesse Ramirez, the Riverside County Division Manager for Cal Cities. And so he's going to be there to talk about the services that Cal Cities provides for the city and some of the advocacy that they do on our behalf. So those are 2 presentations. Just those are no action items. It's just informational items only. So that's the council meeting in the nutshell. Now, there is one other thing that will be on the agenda on consent that I want to talk about specifically today, and that is a development update. So we are providing a development update. We do this periodically, and so this is prepared by our planning director, Kelly Lucia, and it basically provides a map of all of the different developments that are happening around the city and a status update of each one. So I'm just going to go over some of these things briefly. First of all, in the Summerwind Ranch specific plan, there's a lot of elements to this, right? So phase one of the residential piece was completed. 633 homes have been built by various home builders. So we had D.R. Horton, Meritage Homes, Richmond American, and Lennar. We also had the park, Summerwind Park, as part of that as well. The town center is largely complete. This is where Stater Brothers. It's anchored by Stater Brothers. We also have a Del Taco, Jack in the Box, Wingstop, Arby's, Panda Express, Fire Rock, Burgers and Brews. There's also the new urgent care center there. So people have been asking for medical uses. So now we have that, and it's my understanding that the urgent care also accepts Kaiser, which is huge because that works for me. Because if something happens to me while I'm at work, I can go there. Across the street is the Summerwind Commons. Now, this is an area that is the corner of New Roberts and Cherry Valley Boulevard, directly across the street from the marketplace. And so it's been under development for quite a few years now. There has been more movement on the site as of late. They were approved in phase one for their commercial piece back in July of 2020. And then phase two, which consisted of 168 homes, was approved by the city council in April of this year. And so there are some movements. They've had some interest from home builders to construct those 168 units, but there are some utility issues that we're trying to work out before that moves forward, specifically related to sewer capacity. So part of Summerwind Ranch will construct a brand new lift station. There is a temporary one in place right now, but it only can support so much capacity. The new permanent lift station will be able to serve all of Summerwind Trails and all of its various developments, whether it's be residential, the commercial pieces, the industrial pieces, all of it. So we'll be able to serve all of those with capacity. There's also another development to, I guess, maybe the southeast of Summerwind Trails, and there's there's basically some land between the southernmost part of the homes part of Summerwind and Plantation on the Lakes that has a tentative track map approved for it for about 190 homes roughly, I believe, and that's known as what we call the Reedman map. And so that is 191 is actually the number that was approved by the subdivision was approved by the Planning Commission back in April of 22. And then the phases 2 through 5 of Summerwind Trails, the residential piece, are currently under a re-entitlement. They're entitled to be built, but the master developer is applying to have the project rephased. So it won't change the number of units. It probably won't even change the type of units or the mix. A couple of things are switching around. The school district, for example, wanted to have a school located in a different site, so they swapped it with a park. So they moved the park to where the school was supposed to be, and they're putting the school in a better location for the school district. Things like that. So it's not anything major. They have submitted that for approval, and so we do expect to have public hearings either in late 2024 or early 2025. So be on the lookout for that. Again, this is just a rephase of the approved project. It does not change the unit count. So let's see. We talked about the Reedman map that I referred to. Country Club Village, which is along Champions Drive and Desert Lawn. This is the very southern part of the city. There was a development that was approved there. Site rough grading was completed, but all of the applications that were on that site have expired. So there are no entitlements on that at this point. Periodically, we will have people come and ask us about that, but there's nothing happening with that site as of yet. The one thing that's on this map that's actually not in the city, interestingly enough, the warehouses on Cherry Valley Boulevard. I think there's some confusion on that particular project because that site actually was not approved by the city because it's not in the city. A small part of it is the flood control piece of it actually is within the city limits, but the warehouses themselves are not in the city. They're in unincorporated county, and therefore that was approved by the county. So I think that's important to note because people really say, well, Calimesa already approved these warehouses. I hear that sometimes, and that's not true. So because of that, though, we don't have as good of a knowledge base as to what is going on there, because we always see questions on social media. People say, well, I heard it's this, and then that rumor catches on, and it's a big game of telephone. This is one of the downfalls of social media is there's a lot of misinformation out there because people, report that they have second or third hand information, and then people run with it because they either want it to be that way or they just think that's what it is because there's a vacuum of information. So when there's a vacuum of information, misinformation actually goes in there and fills it, right? So as of right now, the leasing that we understand is Sheen. That's been out there, and that is true. Why they're not operating, I don't know. There was an issue that they had with Edison for a while. They weren't able to get a 480-volt transformer that they needed. They were awaiting that. My understanding is that has been resolved. So why they're not in full operation, I don't know. They've had their certificate of occupancy since November of 2023. So it's been almost a year since they've been able to operate because that's when the traffic signals were completed. That was the big thing that they were waiting for. They were not allowed to go into operation until those signals were completed. They've been completed. The signal has been issued. Work has been done inside the buildings, from my understanding, to get them operational, but for whatever reason, they're not operating at this point. To the northwest of that, along Calimesa Boulevard, just south of the Rancho Calimesa Mobile Home Park, the Heights of Calimesa Specific Plan was submitted. There was a preliminary review application submitted in July of 2020. The city staff sent our first comment letter back in September of 2020, and there's been no additional submittals since then. So there's really been not a lot of movement on that. The proposal was for 2,248 multifamily units, 21 acres of mixed-use development, 21 acres of parkland, 20 acres of open space, and 124 acres of natural open space. So nothing's happening with that as far as we know at this point. JP Ranch East. So JP Ranch is up along Singleton Road, right before it turns into Bryant Street. And so that project was complete a while ago, but there's a second phase to it, which consists of 475 single-family residential units with 6,000 square foot minimum lots. The project was approved a long time ago. It was actually approved at the same time as the JP Ranch that is there. It's been that long, and it's been so long that the development agreement is set to expire in December of this year. So at the end of this year, the development agreement will expire, and with that, the application there has been no development plan review submitted on that. We do fully expect that this map will probably expire and the development agreement will expire. So any development that will happen on that will have to be resubmitted from scratch. Not surprising. There's a lot of utility challenges. There's actually been quite a few builders that have come in and tried to do due diligence, and there was actually some. If you look at aerial maps, you can tell there was some grading done for, and actually maybe even not, even beyond rough grading that was done for the track, but nothing ever moved forward with it. So that's where we're at with that. We expect that will probably expire, and then there'll probably be some re-entitlement. Part of the challenge is there are multiple owners that can't agree on what to do there. So that is part of the challenge with that. The Calimesa Golf Course has always been a subject of interest of the community. It's about 121 acres. The golf course has been closed since 2016, but the property owners still hold various community events there. So we have concerts on the green. We've used it for various events. We've had State of the City there before at the clubhouse. So there's still some usage of it there. The city has been periodically approached regarding potential development of the site So a lot of it is zoned currently open space, which golf courses are allowed in open space. But the western part along Calimesa Boulevard actually is zoned commercial. And so those are the ones that have been focused, and I think those have a lot of the value, and that's what people are focused on. So there are some commercial parcels that front Calimesa Boulevard, but then everything to the east, for the most part, is considered open space, and because of that, um, the perimeter development, and then so they wanted to do commercial along Calimesa Boulevard, and then multifamily housing units along the perimeter, and then conservation habitat uplift within the interior of the site where Gardner Wash is located. So you have a major blue line stream that goes through the middle of the golf course. So that's really not prime for development. You just have a lot of environmental challenges and permitting issues. You probably will not be able to get permitted to do that, which is why the proposals we've always seen for housing, which a lot of golf courses in Southern California have gone from golf course to housing. We've seen a lot of that happening. And I think that's happening even more and more because of arena numbers and things like that. So, the housing units would go kind of along the northerly and southerly parts of the property, with the middle staying as open space. But nobody's actually applied applications. We've had phone calls, preliminary discussions, but nothing's moved beyond that. So that's where we are with the golf course. Mesa Verde, that's another big one. It's approved for 3,650 residential units. 250,000 square feet of retail, and approximately 600 acres of open space. The current iteration was approved in 2017, but that project was sold to a developer who has proposed another specific plan amendment to include about 4.2, I believe, million square feet of industrial uses. We do anticipate that the EIR will be released for public review either in late this year or early next year. And then obviously there's a timeline for public hearings in the future after that. So there's nothing happening with that now. They're in the middle of preparing their EIR. We did have a scoping meeting several months back for this EIR. There have been various submittals that have taken place, but nothing comprehensive yet that we can actually start reviewing and finalize into an EIR for public review. So that's where we are with that. The Wendy's that was proposed and approved on Calimesa Boulevard, the old bank site, not the Chase Bank, but the other bank that's on the same property as Stater Brothers. They did get approval for a conditional use permit in December of 23, and the project is now in construction document plan check. So hopefully we're going to see something moving with that soon. The Enclaves at Calimesa, that's a townhome project at 5th and Avenue L. Now, a previous project was rejected by the council. They proposed construction of a 242 unit, 3 to 4 multi-story multifamily apartment project. That was essentially disallowed by the council's decision when they approved the residential infill priority area overlay zone, or RIP AOZ. When they approved that, the council changed the zoning, or the area that property was in. It was recommended to be up for apartment uses, but after community feedback, the council decided that the density should be no more than allowed for townhomes. So the new project consists of 120 two-story attached townhomes with condominium ownership, a tot lot, and a small dog park. So this project was approved by the Planning Commission on July 22nd of this year, and that is moving forward. So that is the first project associated with the overlay zone that has come forward. We do have we have had a pre-application, or actually an application for a travel center. I know that people have heard about this project just north of Jack in the Box along 7th Street on the west side of the I-10, just north of Sandalwood. So this actually consists of 3 commercial lots, or at least proposed commercial lots. The southernmost lot proposes to construct a travel center consisting of a truck stop, diesel fuel station, convenience store, and passenger vehicle fuel station. But they're currently working through environmental mitigation issues. So there are things that we're working on with the applicant on that, but nothing's been worked out. And so we don't expect this to go to public hearing anytime soon. So I know there's been rumors that it's already been approved, and there's things, and everything in between. Nothing's been approved. Nothing's close to getting approved on that project at this point. Let's see. I just want to go over maybe one or two more here. Crystal Windows is an interesting one. So we were approached on a pre-application. They're proposing a new specific plan or a planned development area to accommodate industrial or business park usage, high-density residential, and open space land to be located on 27 acres. Now, this is going to be south of the Heights project, which is the apartments I talked about that are just south of Rancho Calimesa Mobile Home Park. So you would have Rancho Calimesa Mobile Home Park, then adjacent to that south would be the Heights project, the apartment project that hasn't really gone anywhere. And then there's this project. Now, the industrial use we're talking about, it would actually be a manufacturing facility. So the applicant is Crystal Windows, and they would actually fabricate the windows here on site. So this is not a logistics use that's being proposed. It's actually a manufacturing use, which to me, I'm excited about the prospect and the project. As a city manager, I think it would, it's a really good economic development project because I think it will bring high quality jobs to our community. Actual manufacturing jobs to our community. So I think that's something that, and so it wouldn't create the traffic that maybe a warehouse might. There will be obviously some storage for finished product, but there's a small part of the project that would be used for storage for the finished product, then it has to be picked up to be taken where it would go. So no storage, very little storage on site, limited to finished product, but the main facility would be for manufacturing. So we're really excited about that. So that's a quick update on our developments. If you want to take a good look at that particular update, it is available as item 10 in our agenda packet. I will provide a link and which page number to look at if you'd like to take a look on the show notes. So with that, I will wrap this show up. Thank you for joining us this week on Calimesa Insider. The next City Council meeting again is Monday, September 16th at 6 p.m. at the Norton Young Love Senior Center. You can attend in person or watch on the city's YouTube page by going to cityofcalimesa.net/YouTube, then clicking on the live tab. We also have the continuation of the Oak Valley North public hearing taking place on Monday, September 23rd at 6 p.m. also at the Senior Center. Again, you can attend in person or watch online. If you plan on attending in person, I highly recommend getting there early, as we do expect a packed house. And if you would like to speak on the item and did not submit a speaker card at the August 19th meeting, make sure to do that before the start of the meeting as well. Our State of the City, hosted by the Calimesa Chamber of Commerce, will take place on Thursday, September 26th, starting at 11:30 a.m. at the Plantation on the Lake Recreation Center, located at 10961 Desert Lawn Drive, right here in Calimesa. Tickets can be purchased at calimesachamber.com/events. This is the Calimesa Insider Podcast. I am Will Coble, and we will talk to you again next week. Have a great weekend.